Good afternoon. My name is Kelly Dodd. Today I will be speaking with you about Walgreens Boots Alliance. Although most of you in the room are probably very familiar with the company, just want to give you a really quick background because when I speak of Walgreens, you're probably thinking more of the local pharmacy. Actually, Walgreens Boots Alliance was recently formed in 2014 when Walgreens purchased Alliance Boots and created Walgreens Boots Alliance. The company is currently split up into three divisions, which is the U.S. Pharmacy, International Pharmacy, and the Wholesale Division. So when I, from here on out throughout this presentation, mention Walgreens, I'm actually referring to Walgreens Boots Alliance, the whole company as a whole. So moving into that, I created a SWOT analysis on the company and was able to determine 2 strengths, 2 weaknesses, 2 opportunities, and 2 threats. So I'll very quickly run through those and then go into competitive analysis and then break down 2 internal and 2 external factors and then recommendations on how to combat those. So moving to the SWOT analysis, so the strengths for Walgreens is their high level of customer satisfaction. I know we probably all at some point shopped at a Walgreens and they offer their reward program, so a lot of customers take advantage of that, as well as the chance to have a face-to-face interaction with their local pharmacist. Although it's very easy to order things online now, a lot of returning customers have that relationship and that interaction with their pharmacist or even their local cashier that they enjoy going in there and having that face-to-face time with them. Another strength for Walgreens is there's mergers and acquisitions. So they have done several mergers and acquisitions the past couple of years. Obviously the big one being with Alliance Boots. They've also purchased several Rite Aids in the past. There was a plan to purchase all of them in which they backed out of that deal. But they've been very successful in all of these mergers and acquisitions and being able to successfully merge the companies and move forward very successfully with management and company strategic wise, which kind of segues into their weaknesses because although they're very good on the business side of those mergers and acquisitions, they struggle a little bit with merging the cultures. So there's a lot of mishaps in the organizational structure or kind of trying to mesh different cultures together to make a cohesive new company. So that's something that they can obviously work on. Another big one, looking into this one, was the research and development. So although Walgreens does spend the proper amount, I should say, for research and development, they do fall below industry average in this area. And just one example in this is they recently partnered with a company. Sounded like a really good idea. They didn't take the time to do any research in the company because they wanted to be first to market, thought it was just really going to take off, so they wanted to jump right on it. And they did and moved forward with it. And the idea on paper sounds really well, is they were pitching the idea that you could do several blood test on one single droplet of blood. So they were, instead of taking vials and vials, you take one single droplet of blood, put it in a little glass vial, and they could run numerous and multiple tests off that one drop. What they quickly found out was, one, their staff was not properly trained on how to properly do this. Also, they were putting them in tiny glass vials, wasn't very conducive with handling or transporting, so the vials would break and they were having to call customers back to redraw blood to get another specimen, which obviously didn't sit well with the patients, as well as they were finding as time went on that some of these tests were not able to be run on one vial or one drop, so they were having to have customers come back and take numerous specimens from the patients. So this company actually has, Theranos has filed for bankruptcy and that program is no longer be around. So Walgreens invested a lot of training, a lot of time, and a lot of money into that without doing the proper research on it, and it turned out to not be a very wise business decision. Some opportunities would be technology. So, being that we're living in an age where everything can be done online, they're struggling a little bit and have a very big opportunity here, especially with merging, with acquiring Alliance Boots and having that international and the wholesale side to it. Is they're struggling with competing with the likes of Amazon, where everything can be shipped overnight free of charge, and be there the next day, as well as now Target, Walmart, they're offering order online and pick up being brought to your car. So there's all these different luxuries being added or advertised for these companies, whereas Walgreens is just your average local pharmacy. So although that kind of sits well for the older generation that likes that face to face, Walgreens has the opportunity to kind of bridge that to where, as the older group of customers are going to be shopping less and less, this newer generation coming in, they have to find a way to connect with them, to get them to shop with them versus the competitors. And that kind of segues into the other opportunity of market development. So there are going to be these other companies coming in, and they've got to find a way to find their competitive niche. That overlays with, it also is viewed as a threat. So they're losing a lot of their business to the online shopping, and then the rising pay rates. So with the current request for the increase for minimum wage, as they continue to try to drive in-person and in-store business, they're going to have the increase in demand for a pay raise. So that's going to raise their costs on having those in-house employees. So after doing the SWOT analysis on Walgreens success itself, I also ran the financials with CVS and Rite Aid. And although Walgreens is sitting pretty well financially in comparison to the two, one thing to note is their current ratio. So it's been increasing steadily over the last 5 years, and they're actually sitting at a current ratio of below 1. So in the current situation, they're not able to pay off any of their, they would not be able to pay off their current liabilities with their current assets. So financially speaking, they wouldn't be able to leverage anything. They don't really have any borrowing power. So they would need to find a way to get rid of some of those liabilities, or increase their assets to sit them in a better financial spot. After moving out of the SWOT analysis and the competition, and like I said, there wasn't a whole lot financial wise that stood out other than that current ratio, and they are sitting higher than, are sitting in a better financial spot than CVS and Rite Aid. I was narrowed it down to two main external factors. So one of those is going back prior to what I said earlier about the younger generation. So won't go too much into it just for time's sake, but they're going to have to find a way to combat the new competitors that are pushing really hard for online shopping. That they're going to, if they want to go that direction to be competitive, they'd be able to, if they close stores, so this has a great effect on customers, employees, all the way down the line, because they would be losing employees, shutting down stores would affect the community. But they would be able to pay in-house, for shipping, loading, in customer service, phone support, if they went more to the online to compete with some of these other companies. They do have the advantage, though, of with already being set up in this acquisition with internationally. So that is something, because the other companies are already international, so this works well for them. They just need to find a way to drive this online business to compete. The other one that they're struggling with is pharmacy reimbursement. So there's a lot of changes going on in the reimbursement rate, and being small local pharmacies usually have visualization to what that current rate is, and they're able to adjust their stock to cover usually 90 days. So they're able to determine what that rate's going to be and manage their stock accordingly. When they start to get larger, they lose some of that visualization, so they're not able to see what that rate's going to be, and sometimes they'll have to get the reimbursement rate, the lower reimbursement rate, and sometimes that moves to or leads to them losing money. So leveraging the wholesale side of the acquisition, they've got to find a way to better manage their stock, but also leverage more of the local Walgreens to try to get better visualization on what that reimbursement rate is, to where they can find that happy medium where they have enough stock but they're not holding on to too much, to where they're going to have to push that product at the lower reimbursement rate, because there's a lot of money that can be lost in that. So there's a lot more to learn on that, and it's probably going to be more of a strategic and learn as you go thing to try to find that happy place between the two. The internal factors, a big one is going into the research and development. So going on to the previous poor decision they made with Theranos. So finding a way to avoid that, but also doing more research into the decisions they make, and also doing research and development into that technology so they're able to compete more online. The other one is internal factor would be the CEO. So when this merger or when the acquisition happened, the new CEO was put into place. It was supposed to be a temporary thing, but he's actually still the current CEO. But he's also the highest shareholder, so he owns the most shares in the company. So it's a unique situation where he's kind of his own boss. So he has the say on the board, which also hires and determines the effectiveness and the pay of the CEO. So it's a weird dynamic where it's like he can almost veto himself. So internal, they've got to figure a way to evaluate him and make sure that he's doing the job needed, but they really can't do anything about replacing him, because he has the opportunity to kind of shoot that down and keep himself in that position. I don't think so far it's become an issue. As far as all the research shows, he's doing a really good job at that. So there hasn't come to that situation, but it's a unique internal management situation where you're trying to manage the boss, from the board spot, whereas he runs the board. So wrapping all this up, some of the recommendations for the company is to try to alleviate some of the liabilities and get that down. Also to spend as much money as possible, or to allocate as much money as possible, and to R&D to make sure that the proper decisions are being made for the company, so they're not into those situations where they're making poor business decisions. And as well as who's making those decisions, so as the CEO, to make sure he's making those proper decisions and allocating the money where it needs to be. And in that research and development, make sure technology is a big part of that, so that they can find a way to be really competitive in this new market with the big push to online shopping. But as a whole, compared to the other companies in the industry, like I mentioned, Rite Aid and CVS, Walgreens is sitting in a nice spot, competitive wise. And with the acquisition of Alliance Boots in 2014, they've positioned themselves to really be in a good spot internationally and with the wholesale. If they can just find a way to really target the online shopping, then they have a really good chance of continuing to grow year after year. So I thank you for your time, and yeah, that's it. Thanks.